Okay, so picture this. Could a serious brain disease actually start right there in your stomach? I know, it sounds totally like science fiction, right? But the reality is literally staring us right in the gut. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a really incredible explainer on the absolutely fascinating and sometimes pretty vulnerable communication highway between your brain and your belly. Trust me, this is going to completely change how you view your own digestion.
We are going to be decoding the complex neural network that controls how we digest food, looking closely at gastrointestinal motility in neurologic disease. We'll figure out what happens when the wiring between your central nervous system and your digestive tract gets, well, a little frayed. The answers are honestly pretty surprising.
All right, let's look at our agenda for today. First, the gut's second brain. Second, when the system fails. Third, central brain diseases. Fourth, peripheral wires and diabetes. And finally, diagnosis and management.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the gut's second brain.
Now, we usually think of our brain as the ultimate sole commander of our body, right? But your digestive tract actually has a mind of its own. It's mind-blowing, but your enteric nervous system, that's the dedicated nerve network inside your gut, packs roughly 100 million neurons. Just to put that into perspective for you, that is basically equivalent to your entire spinal cord. It's this massive network that lets your gut independently handle its own motor, secretory, and sensory functions. Pretty cool, huh? And when you look at how this is wired, you can see how those extrinsic neural pathways from the brain and spinal cord connect straight into the gut's own intrinsic pacemaker cells. Those little internal networks down in the gut wall, including what we call the interstitial cells of Cajal, essentially act as the electrical pacemakers. They integrate all this incoming neurological activity just to keep things moving smoothly. To really get how these pathways work together, it helps to think of the whole system like driving a car. Your parasympathetic nerves, which are mostly driven by the vagus nerve, well, that's your gas pedal. It's excitatory, telling your gut muscles to push digestion forward. On the flip side, your sympathetic nerves act as the brakes. They inhibit muscle movement and actually stop digestion. So if you're super stressed out, your body slams on those sympathetic brakes. But when you finally relax, the parasympathetic gas pedal takes over. So, the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is peristalsis. This is the foundational movement our gut uses to actually transport our food. It isn't just some random squeezing. Actually, it's a highly programmed neural reflex that needs perfect, split-second timing between your nerves and your muscles. You can literally see the exact moment a bolus, or a bite of food, stretches the gut wall. The sensory neurons detect that stretch and boom, instantly, they trigger excitatory transmitters like acetylcholine to contract the muscle right above the food. And at the exact same time, they release inhibitory transmitters like nitric oxide to relax the muscle below it. Squeeze above, relax below, and the food moves forward. It's just this beautifully elegant mechanical wave.
Moving on to Section 2, when the system fails.
So what actually happens when that perfect neural communication breaks down? If the gas gets stuck or the brakes are slammed too hard because of nerve damage, your gut just stops working right. It's kind of like being a medical detective here. We can link these really common symptoms straight back to their hidden neurological causes. Having trouble swallowing or dysphagia, that might be lower motor neurons failing. Stomach just not emptying, otherwise known as gastroparesis, the vagus nerve could be damaged. Or what about severe constipation? That actually often points to sacral parasympathetic denervation. The symptom shows up in the gut, but the real culprit is the nerve.
Next up, Section 3, central brain diseases. Now we're exploring what happens when primary diseases of the central nervous system mess with these delicate gut reflexes. We usually just assume brain diseases only affect things like memory or movement, but the gut is right there in the line of fire. Which brings us to this absolutely revolutionary concept in Parkinson's disease research called the Braak hypothesis. It actually suggests that Parkinson's might not even start in the brain. Instead, a pathogen enters the gut, causing these abnormal proteins called alpha-synuclein to clump up. Then those proteins literally travel upward from the gut, hitching a ride on the vagus nerve like a highway straight into the brain. And here is the really astounding part. Because of this gut-first pathway, severe gastrointestinal symptoms like really bad constipation can actually show up a full 20 years before the classic motor tremors of Parkinson's even begin. Just let that sink in. Your gut is literally waving a red flag
2 whole decades before the brain shows the most recognizable signs. But it's not just Parkinson's. Central events like strokes or multiple sclerosis can dramatically cut those communication lines between the brain and body. Like after a stroke, nearly 50% of patients in rehab deal with severe swallowing issues or delayed colonic transit, basically because the brain signals just aren't making it down to the gut. Similarly, with MS, that impaired control from the brain causes bowel and bladder problems for over half of all patients.
All right, on to section 4, peripheral wires and diabetes.
So stepping away from the main brain for a second, let's look at the peripheral wiring itself. Even if your brain is perfectly healthy, the cables connecting it to the gut can still get destroyed. The biggest offender here? Diabetes mellitus. Chronically high blood sugar literally acts like battery acid on these delicate peripheral wires. It leads to something called autovagotomy, which is basically the body's own environment severing the vagus nerve connections. It wipes out those vital pacemaker cells we talked about, the interstitial cells of Cajal. And without those pacemakers, the stomach becomes completely paralyzed. That's gastroparesis, and it makes digesting food or regulating blood sugar incredibly difficult.
And finally, section 5, diagnosis and management.
So, when the nerves do fail, how in the world do we get the gut moving again? Well, doctors use some pretty incredible imaging techniques to pinpoint exactly where those reflexes are breaking down. They use video fluoroscopy to actually watch a patient swallow in real time, making sure food isn't going straight into the lungs. They do scintigraphy, where you eat a needle with a tiny, totally safe radioactive tracer to map exactly how slow a paralyzed stomach is emptying. And they use high-resolution manometry to check the exact pressure and muscle coordination down in the pelvic floor. Once they figure out what's wrong, managing it is all about restoring balance. It's about artificially driving the system when the nerves just can't do it themselves. That might mean using a feeding tube, like a peg, to bypass paralyzed swallowing muscles altogether. It could mean taking specific laxatives or prokinetic meds that act as chemical gas pedals to literally force the gut to contract. Or, amazingly enough, it can even involve biofeedback training, where patients literally have to reteach their pelvic floor muscles how to coordinate again. I want to leave you with this final thought today, and I really hope it changes how you listen to your own body. The next time your stomach drops or your gut aches, just ask yourself, is it really just something you ate? Or is your second brain trying to tell your first brain a secret? The connection is undeniably real, and honestly, science is only just beginning to decode the messages. Thank you so much for hanging out and exploring this explainer with us today. I really hope you found this deep dive into your neural wiring as completely fascinating as I did. Please make sure to hit that like button, share, and subscribe so we can keep making these for you. And definitely visit our clinic for any of your physical therapy and emergency pain relief needs. We are absolutely here to help keep your whole system running smoothly. Catch you next time.